Thank you, Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Grassley, for holding this important hearing on carjackings, a form of violent crime that is steadily increasing across both red and blue states. It's the latest in a series of hearings you've held in this committee to look at violence prevention and what we can do to be smarter on crime and more effective, and what's the federal role to help reverse this alarming trend. As the co-chair of the Senate Law Enforcement Caucus with Senator Blunt of Missouri, I'm particularly sensitive to the challenges of law enforcement where there's inadequate or uneven collection of data. And one of the challenges here in terms of understanding the rise in carjackings across the country, and particularly in my home state of Delaware, is accurate and comprehensive statewide statistics, partly in my state because of how criminal law categorizes crime, depending on the particular facts of each case. So if I could, first, Sheriff Dart and Chief Garcia, I'd be interested in hearing about some of the obstacles to state and local data collection on carjackings. And then I'd be very interested in hearing how you think federal law enforcement can most critically play a constructive role in addressing this ongoing challenge. Sheriff?
Thank you so much, Senator. You nailed it, Senator. When we first got engaged with this because of the rise, our very first stumbling block was getting beyond the anecdotes and to actually have real hard data. And we spent an inordinate amount of time, our office, collecting all the data from the city of Chicago and all the rest of the suburbs to put a comprehensive database together. And why was that important? Well, just to get at where were the carjackings occurring? What time of day? What vehicles were they using? Everything was all across the board. And I can't emphasize enough how correct you are. So we have 130 suburbs in my county as well. And it runs the gamut from ones that are wildly well-funded to ones that literally pay their officers $10 an hour. And so the turnover is such that more often than not, I'm called in to do their patrol work because they don't have anybody for shift after shift. So with that, when you ask about what can the federal government do, anything and everything you can do to put together a template on data collection, to put together resources so that it isn't just the well-off departments have dashboards like we do. We have a phenomenal dashboard that we put together, but they have the ability to do it because everyone knows if you put junk in, that's what you're going to get.
Thank you, Sheriff. When I was county executive in Delaware, one of the things we did was literally borrow from Cook County's work on data analysis. Forgive me, I just have 2.5 minutes. Chief, if you could, how can law enforcement federally best help law enforcement at the municipal and local level?
You know, I will say this, if the model that we have really is truly having SACs that are in place that truly want to buy in to the law enforcement agency's mission and role, and to not be single-minded, but be able to not just look outside the box, but act outside the box with regards to who their law enforcement partner is, and having those relationships.
Having ATF, DEA, FBI, marshals actively engaged, coordinating with local law enforcement, and then using that data analysis to target those resources, that strikes me as one of the things we can bring to the table. Last two questions, if I might. Mr. Herdman, you mentioned in your testimony expanded federal prosecution of juveniles involved in carjackings isn't a reasonable solution. Could you tell us briefly why not?
Thank you, Senator, and appreciate the question. Yes, it's just not feasible. The volume of offender, as well as the resources that are available on the federal level and the federal courts are just not feasible for widespread prosecution of juveniles. And I think we have to acknowledge that going in because of the prevalence of juvenile offenders, particularly in carjacking, and identify other ways that there could be federal support for prosecution, rehabilitation, and reentry for youthful offenders.
Well, the president's made a proposal to fund community violence interventions as a means of reducing violent crime. Mr. Bryant, what sort of community-based interventions could make a meaningful impact in reducing the involvement of juveniles, of kids, in this particular kind of violent crime?
Thank you for the question. I think really reaching out to the highest risk individuals, typically those are actually going to be adults. And the more that we can rehabilitate adults, the better they're going to be as parents for their kids, because we have to, sort of rehabilitate our communities, our families, so that they're more self-sustaining, so that the institutions that are going to educate our kids and heal our kids are all working in tandem. So the work we do is really trying to build at the community level, because it's the people in the community that have to be empowered to do for themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. I think I can see a general approach: improve data collection and analysis, improve the coordination, having senior agents in charge, special agents in charge who actually bring federal resources to bear. Make sure that we're not targeting juveniles in a way that makes them essentially the scapegoat for what is a broader challenge, and have community-based interventions. We have to have effective and appropriate law enforcement and prosecutions targeted at the most violent adult individuals, and community-based supports for those undergoing reentry to make sure they don't reoffend, and to give them the support and the options to avoid a steady increase in this kind of crime. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this productive hearing.